everybody. Welcome to the entertainment headquarters and welcome to Into the Darkness, my segment on the channel dedicated to all things horror from movies and television. And right now, I am joined by my good friend, Mr. Anthony Jordan of Anthony Jordan's Movies and Gaming. And once a month, me and a group of my guests generally choose a franchise and we then discuss that horror franchise and give our thoughts on it and, of course, our ratings on each particular entry into this particular franchise. And right now, this franchise was a pick that I thought, there was only 3 films in it, and I thought, let's have a break from the heavy hitters of the franchises and, focus on a lighter franchise in terms of the number of movies in it. So I chose none other than Hostel. So Hostel came out, I believe, in 2005. It started the Hostel franchise. And basically, like, after we had, of course, like the Scream films in the 1990s, that kind of revived the slasher genre. The Hostel films, alongside, I guess, Saw and things like Wrong Turn, what they basically did, they basically created the uncomfortable, what I would say, shock horror, grotesque horror kind of genre, where it was all about how horrible they could be, how brutal, how gory they could be, and they were there for shock value. So, Anthony, what's your opinion like of the film that came out in the early 2000s?
Well, you said we got films that were just more focusing on just the shock value, and it was a time where horror would become more mean-spirited and grotesque for the sake of being grotesque. Around this time, we also had the Devil's Rejects, and this was just a few years removed from getting Rob Zombie's Halloween, and it was kind of a interesting time for horror where it was just going into that darker, more grotesque and mean-spirited style of filmmaking, and I'm glad that we've kind of dialed back from that because this style just really isn't my thing.
Yeah. Well, I think some of it's hit and miss. Some of it can be good and interesting. Some of it can be just pointless. You mentioned Devil Rejects. I do quite enjoy, though, The House of a Thousand Corpses. That is kind of one of my guilty pleasures when it comes to horror films.
Yeah.
So let's get cracking and talk Hostel. So the Hostel franchise, it came out in 2025. It includes 2 theatrical films and 1 straight-to-home release film created by Eli Roth. The plot centers around a Slovenian criminal organization that lures innocent foreigners into their hostels where wealthy sadistic bids upon them for torture and murder. Over the course of the films, the hierarchy of the cult group is revealed to operate internationally. So basically, the first film came out in 2025, and the plot of the first movie centers around a group of Americans that decide that they tour in Europe, and they have a friend. I think the characters' names were, you had Paxton, who was played by Jay Hernandez. You had Derek Richardson, who played Josh. You had, I cannot pronounce this man's name, so I'm not even going to attempt to. But his character was Ollie. Then you had the character Natalia, the character of Kana, and you had the Dutch businessman and a host of other characters. But this film basically starts off with these guys who are traveling Europe, and then suddenly the guys who are traveling Europe, they basically decide, they were going to go to Amsterdam, but they get convinced by this guy who was from the night go to Slovakia, because he says the women in Slovakia absolutely love American men. He's basically trying to tempt them to go over to Slovakia to get laid, because that's all they're there for, is to see the sights of Europe and to meet hot women and to do what young guys do. So they end up going to Slovakia and checking into the hostel. And after checking into the hostel, they meet two hot girls who are very attractive. They end up going to a nightclub. There's a lot of events that happen before the nightclub, like they were on the train. And there was an incident on the train where I think it was Paxton was getting touched up by this businessman. And he's like, get off and all this stuff. He disappears. And then later on in the film, the same businessman appears and saves him from a gang of Slovakian, like kind of a children pickpocketing gang.
Yeah, what was up with those children?
Crazy stuff. But then what ends up happening is then all of a sudden, I think it's Ollie goes missing. And he goes missing, and this is where you were introduced to this Chinese woman, Kana, who's now looking for her friend who's also gone missing. And this is where things start to get creaky, where you see imagery of Ollie's decapitated body and our friends being tortured, and shit goes down, and it's pretty grotesque with the stuff that happens. So then, like you say, then it's revealed that this hostel is run by this cult type organization that deliberately kidnaps tourists, brings them to this hostel or a compound, and they're basically just tortured. And there's like a group of wealthy kind of cultish businessmen that bid who's going to get the person and torture them. And so, Anthony, your opinion of the first Hostel film and its overall plot?
While I do find elements of the plot interesting, I really didn't like this one. I hated the characters, and it just, for me, it just crossed too much into mean-spiritedness, and just
Yeah,
some of the like absurdity that even happens in this film, where you go from these horrific things happening to the main character escaping, then those little demon spawned children attacking and killing one of the guys pursuing him. Look, it's just a all over the place, like absurd movie. And I know they were
yeah.
going for deadly serious, but like some of the stuff was just so out there, like the kids, that it made it unintentionally funny.
Yeah, and it's like what was said at the beginning. Like this was the era in horror that after Saw came out and really shocked the world with like psychological like shock horror and grotesque horror, that every film studio was trying to copy that of Saw. And then you can see the elements in the Hostel films where they are trying to be like Saw. Like when the people are getting tortured, they find the most grotesque in horrible ways to torture them. In like, for example, you've got what happened here. If I can get it up. Where he like basically pulled the eye out and there's like all the goo comes gushing out of her eyeball.
There's the friend that got his Achilles tendons cut.
Yes. Yeah. But the first film for me was at least, I felt watchable. I did enjoy it because it was the first Hostel movie. I thought the plot of the first movie was fairly interesting, because especially being from Europe and being from the UK and being from England, we have hostels in the UK for like foreign visitors who don't want to stay in the big expensive hotels. And I know friends and family who've traveled around Europe and stayed in these, crummy little hostels just to save money. And honestly, just the idea of staying in one of those places and like torture and hell being, going through that is quite creepy and terrifying that this potentially could happen. And obviously, you have all like, what goes on in the world with human trafficking and all of those elements. And I feel it's like the first film's kind of playing into those fears.
I actually had no clue that that's what a hostel was. I just assumed
Yeah.
they gave it an edgy sounding name.
No, hostels are real places around Europe and the UK, and I would imagine in certain cities and areas in America that would probably have hostels. And there's some hostels where you do have separate rooms, but then you have to share the bathroom with all the other guests. Or some hostels you go into, it's like a
One
room, like a
room
giant,
everyone
massive room,
sleeps in.
just full of bunk beds. And if you pay your money, which it might only cost you like $20 a night, you go into this big room and there's just loads of bunk beds, and you just have to pick a bunk bed, but you're sleeping in the hostel with nothing but strangers around you in the bunk bed.
I
And
could not sleep in a room full of total strangers like that.
yeah, well, that's the fear of being in a hostel, you see. And and you get a lot of people who get pickpocketed or they get the stuff stolen in hostels because obviously they're fast asleep or they've been on a night out partying in a random city. They come in and they go back to their bunk bed where they've got the bag underneath, they open the bag and all the things have been stolen. But that's the risk you take because you're choosing to pay 20, 30, $40 to stay in a shithole, basically, with no security in just a bed in a bathroom. That's basically what a hostel is.
Also, I did think was clever, like the fact that like it's Americans are the most popular targets in this, and when you think
Yeah,
about it, makes sense why, because they're from the opposite side of the world. So by the time anyone realizes something's gone wrong, it's going to be completely untraceable. Where if a local goes missing, that's going to raise red flags a lot faster. So it does make sense why foreigners, especially Americans, are the most popular targets for them.
What did you think of the villain in the first Hostel film? Like the people involved.
I thought it was like, admittedly, I mean, it was creepy in its own way. The fact that you have this organization of people who may seem nice and friendly on the surface, but they're just really these sadistic monsters.
hmm
So, even though I didn't like the film, there were interesting things here.
Yeah. One thing I will say, of course, this is from the mind of Eli Roth. And Eli Roth obviously is somebody that has kind of carved his name and made his stitch, in the world of horror. And as you know, he keeps coming back with different things. Like my favorite film he's actually done, which is like another movie that goes back to the classic horror genre and the classic slasher genre, was Thanksgiving. That came out, I think that came out in 2024.
I've heard good
Um,
about it.
There was, I have to admit, it was different. It was unique, and it was another twist and another, great addition to the classic slasher genre. And I thought he did a brilliant job with that. And I think because you can see there's elements of Hostel in that, like the terms of like the kills, like the grotesqueness of some of the kills, but the actual plot of Thanksgiving, it's like a very it's like a homage to lots of other slasher films.
Well, funnily enough, my favorite, not just my favorite film by him, but the only one I actually like is his Death Wish.
Yeah, Death Wish is a good movie
But
by
I
Eli
heard
Roth.
Eli Roth is remaking Death Wish. I thought it was going to be a complete disaster. Then I've heard if you can get past no Charles Bronson, it's actually a good movie. And when I finally sat down and watched it, I'm like, you know what? He did a good job here.
Mm. And I like Cabin Fever by Eli Roth. I thought Cabin Fever was a decent film. And there's a film that's coming out this year called The Ice Cream Man, which that looks like a mixture of like the film that won the Oscars this year, Weapons, and Children of the Corn or something. It just looks batshit crazy. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for that one, but that looks like it's going to be a fun one to check out. But yeah, I do like some of Eli Roth stuff, but some of it, like you've mentioned, is questionable. But then you have the second movie, Hostel 2, after the end of the first one, where we're introduced for the first time to this really creepy organization and cult. We now get Hostel Part 2. And believe it or not, this film has a fan. It has a fan in Quentin Tarantino. As Quentin Tarantino was an executive producer, I believe, on Hostel 2.
Okay, I can kind of see why he actually liked this movie, because I do at least like how it expanded the society a little more.
Yeah. So, just like the first film, this one, the plot basically is the exact same plot of the first movie, except to change the gender of the victims. So, this is about 3 art students that are in Rome that then get directed to Slovakia and end up staying in, this facility, and all hell breaks loose. Just like with the first movie, you have these art students, who are all traveling around Europe trying to see, parts of the world and, enjoy the youth and the freedom away from America. And, they're all there in Slovakia at this like village thing. And then they all suddenly get kidnapped to this facility. And just like the first movie, it's like this cult organization and these wealthy businessmen then one by one start to then bid on the women, and then each one gets to torture them in these grotesque and uncomfortable ways. And I have to be honest, the first one was shocking and it was unique, but this one for me tries to outdo the first one in terms of the kills, in terms of like the plot. The plot's the same plot. It's just the thing is with these Hostel films, there's only so much you can do with them. So how it's all about like how do you get people from a hotel or from wherever to be put in a position where they're going to be tortured? That's basically what the plots are in these movies.
And also, how much more gruesome can we make the torture?
Yes. And there is some interesting scenes and there is some interesting kills in this. This do you have a favorite kill in the second film?
Beyond it, I watched it Saturday and I already don't remember any of them. Other than that last guy that got killed.
Yeah, the last guy. Yeah, but like I'll show some imagery from the actual horror element in these films. So I've already showed this scene. Of course, we've seen this guy getting tortured and shit goes down. And then obviously the kills in the second one are quite grotesque. But like you say, the outcome of the movie is pretty much similar to the outcome of the first movie in terms of the gore and the kills. I can see why, after seeing the first one, why Quentin Tarantino, because it felt young, it felt fresh, felt different to other horror movies, which kind of, that's for me the positive of the Hostel films, that it does feel fresh and different. It doesn't like have the same old settings of like a serial killer or who's or a character that's cursed or whatever. Like how many times can you create a character and you want him to be the new Michael Myers or Jason or Freddy, you know,
Or
or
this
then
they just made the society the villain, so you don't need any one human character to be the icon.
yeah, precisely. So that's what I like about these. It's not, you don't just have one face, one villain. These films, anyone could turn out to be the villain. And it's similar like that with Scream now. Scream, like everyone says, isn't Ghostface iconic? No, the costume of Ghostface is iconic, but the person behind the costume isn't iconic. That's how I look at things when it comes to Scream.
Yeah.
But the second film, basically, there's more torture, there's more hell, they find more grotesque way to torture the people. And Quentin Tarantino, for some reason, loves these films.
There was I
And
will say I did appreciate the twist at the end.
yes, the twist at the end, yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the twist at the end, Anthony?
Well, our main girl, she manages to manipulate the guy who's torturing and killing him, and she gets him in a very risky situation, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And then the security rushes in because before that, we see more of the rules and like once you pay, you have to kill or you get killed because this guy, his friend, didn't go through with it and he got killed. And then she's like, I have money, I'll pay whatever it is. I have money, I'll pay whatever it is. And they're like, first, oh, your parents' money, and then it's a twist. No, she's actually obscenely wealthy herself. And the
Yes.
guy's like, well, okay, but just so you know, we have a rule and someone has to die. And well, she literally neuters the guy, then feeds something to one of the guard dogs. In the last shot we see is her face down on a table in a lot of pain, and you think, oh, they're killing her anyway, but this society, everyone in it has a tattoo of a bloodhound dog on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the proof you're in the society. And she's getting the tattoo of the bloodhound, so she went from the victim to one of the villains. And again, I didn't really like this one, but credit where it's due, that was a clever twist.
I thought that was I was gonna say the end at the end was really good, where she went from being one of the victims to one of the hunted to becoming a hunter, becoming part of the elite hunting group, or the elite hunting club is what it's called. And I just thought that was fantastic. And like we said, there's iconic villains, there's iconic heroes in films, but this film series is the first. I don't know if it's the first, but it's the one that comes to mind where the villain isn't a single unit person what you've mentioned. It's an actual club, it's a society, and it's a cult-ish group. And I honestly think, I don't know if you've seen it, Anthony, but I definitely believe the Elite Hunting Club, was definitely an inspiration for ideas for the Squid Game television series.
Yeah,
So,
it sounds like it could have been.
so if you haven't seen it, the Squid Games series is basically where you have people who are in extreme debt or in desperate situations, and you get this man who goes around the street and he sees and discovers these people, plays a game with them and gives them a card, and they're that desperate that they'll probably jump at the chance to join this game. And if they win the game, they win all the money. But to win the game, every single person in the game has to die one by one via playing these horrific games inside this island, which is the Squid Game.
But I found out by that the American version they're making, from what I understand, it's not an actual remake. It's like an in-universe spin-off.
It's a continuation. Yeah, because there's a twist at the end of the final of the third season where one of the main characters who's in, I think it's China, ends
Korea.
up coming to the United States, and he's in the back of his car and he's driving down the street, and he stops the car when he looks out the window. He looks over and there's an American woman basically playing the game to trick somebody into doing the Squid Game. And do you know who the American woman was?
Who?
Kate Blanchett.
Wow.
So if Kate Blanchett's going to be the front man, that's the name of it. Just remember, the front man is the name of the person who goes around the streets looking for the people who are in extreme debt or who are in desperate situations that they need money or they need to get out of this situation. They're called the front man, who searches for these people to enter into the Squid Game. So Kate Blanchett at the end of the third Squid Game series is the front man in America, which is literally standing there playing the game where you have to, you throw like a rock on the floor and you have to try and turn it over onto its back, and if you win the money. And literally, as the man sitting in the car staring at her, she kind of turns and sees him watching her, and she just has like this little like creepy smile on her face, like, I know who you are and you know who I am. It was weird, but it was fun. But yes, I generally feel the Hostel films have inspired the Squid Game television series. So finally, my friend, we have the third Hostel film. Now, the third Hostel film is a bit different to the other two, because the other two are based in Europe. They're based in Slovakia, where the third one takes up back to the States, back to Las Vegas. And this was the first of the three films that didn't go to theatres. It was a straight to physical media release. It was also the first in the series not to be produced or written or directed by Eli Roth. And I think you very much can tell, Anthony, that is the case with this film.
There was just, we'll get to it, but there was just like one part in this movie that made me laugh, but that was it.
I bet you it's the same part that made me laugh. So this film, the third in the series, was directed by Scott Spiegel and is the final installment in the Hostel series. It was written by Michael D. Weiss. This is the only film, like I said, in the series to not have Eli Roth involved, and is in the production, and is also the only one not to have a theatrical release. The film relocate the elite hunting club from Slovakia to Las Vegas, and this one is basically where you have these jackasses in Vegas partying, being hang dogs, and basically shit goes down and they basically get involved and they are slowly, put inside the mind and the world of the elite hunting club.
We'll say it was at least a nice change of pace to get away from the Eastern European scenery. I don't know if I would have chose Vegas personally, but the new location at least was needed.
Yeah. I think they should have, because the thing is with hostels that they're all in big cities, but they're always in like a shit part of town, basically, or a part of town that's hidden and secluded. So if they were going to do it, they should have put the hostel or where they go, like on the outskirts of Vegas. Or I think, like what would have made perfect sense for me for a Hostel movie, or do something like The Hills Have Eyes, like put it like have like a casino like in the middle of, say, Arizona, in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, where nothing's there, and you could have had the young couple that you see who are together at the beginning. You could have had them driving the car and somebody's purposely sabotaged the car so it breaks down right near this shithole of a hostel in the middle of the Arizonan desert. They then end up staying there because they've got no choice, and then they could have got kidnapped and dragged down a mine shaft to like the torture facility for the the elite hunters club, and had it in like a darker, more area like that, and give it a bit more like the Hills Have Eyes vibe. And I think that might have worked better for like the American setting than rather than Vegas.
Like, right in the middle of Vegas somewhere was too crowded of a place.
Yeah. Yeah, or like you say, they should have had it where people were leaving Vegas and the cars deliberately breaks down. Someone pulls up to help them and says, "I can take you to this place just outside of Vegas, which is secluded," and then it would have given it a much more, a much more darker, more desperate feel, and like you know, made the plot feel a lot more, stronger and darker. Where for me, with the third one being straight to physical, they just threw everything at the wall with this one to make it horrifying and terrifying. And there is some good stuff in this one,
It
though.
leans a lot more into the torture.
Yeah.
Because it's just not about doing the killing. They're actually putting it on as a show for other people, and like the people can bet on what they're going to say or what implements are going to be used. Like there's one part with one guy where you see one of these people bet on a drill being used, and this guy actually grabs the drill and just teases the person with it. And then when he doesn't use it, we see the guy who bet big money on the drill smash his glass.
Yeah. And there's some like the skin take one was disgusting, and then you have this guy, and then obviously you have this one with the bugs, with the
What were they
cockroaches.
like even thinking with that one?
Like this was the most bizarre thing I've seen in the damn film.
Yeah, like real Madagascar hissing roaches are not going to do that.
Nope. Unless they're summoned by a fucking beetle god and was like, hypnotized to do it.
Yeah, that one should have been left out. It just didn't
Yeah.
make sense.
I feel it's like this actual kill though, and how it's done. It reminds me. I don't know if is it Tales from the Crypt, or is it Tales from the Dark Side, where you had that man who was the recluse who was like frightened. He was a dreamaholic, and then he had all the bugs that came in and killed him in his apartment.
What it reminded me of, I can't remember the name of the movie. I barely even remember, but like late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around there, USA did an original movie about this killer species of roach, and they essentially crawl in your mouth, plant the eggs inside of you, and then the offspring hatch and eat their way out from inside of you.
Was it not Nest? That
It,
reminds me of Nest.
it could have been. I don't really remember the name. I just remember the details, but that's what that scene made me think of.
Yeah, I think I've seen that film as well. But the third one for me, it's really hard to pinpoint which of the three is the better in the series. I'm gonna say probably the third one's my favorite. Not the third one. The first one's probably the most watchable and the rewatchable of the three for me.
Also, with this one though, I said the scene. There's this one European guy who they have in the cages. In the scene when he finally gets out and tases the guy to death, then gets the gun, he's like, "You die, you die, you die."
Mm-hmm.
That actually made me laugh. And I was disappointed when he got killed because that's the only one I like.
Yeah, true. But this scene, I think, was from the second movie. No, the first movie. Actually, they all just feel like one movie.
Yeah, like
Well,
there's so much similarity, especially between the first two. They do kind of bleed together.
yeah. So, in all, what's your final thoughts then, I guess, Anthony, on the Hostel films? Because I can't really think much more to discuss with these films.
Interesting concept, just not great delivery, not my cup of tea. If I was to rate them, I'd give the first one a 1.5, the second one a 1, and the third one just a 0.5 because that one scene made me laugh.
Yeah. For me, if I'm going to rate the Hostel movies, I'll give the first one right in the middle a 5 out of 10. I'll give the second one the same rating, 5 out of 10, because I just think it's the same fucking film, just with women and not men. The third one's more, you can tell it's a lower budget. You can tell it's just there for shock horror. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10.
I will also
think
say with the third one, for being a lower budget, they did a good job stretching the budget.
Yeah. I think for me, I've always said this. So when it comes to film, you don't have to have a multi-million pound budget. It all depends on direction and how you spend the money. And for like you say, because of the director, because of the writer, and it's not Eli Roth, I think he deliberately tried to spend the money like you see on the shocks and the gore. And I think, like I said, the thing with the third one, if it was set in a different setting and not just set inside Vegas and was set in a creepier, secluded area, I think it would have been a stronger and potentially the better of the three films.
Maybe somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains.
Absolutely. I could say that, definitely.
Because, like, there's
But,
some of these mountain communities, like, there are just some places with, like, just nothing but these dirt roads, no street signs, no street lights that I guarantee you, if you seen them, would make you think of the Moors.
oh, well, you've seen me, I've showed you footage of me in a car in the pitch black moors heading home one night. And honestly, it's creepy, it's dark, it's scary. You cannot hear a thing around you, just the engine of the car. So I could imagine being over like in the Appalachian Mountains, how creepy it must be at night. Just imagine staying in a tent on the mountainside and there's just you, your torch, and nothing else around. That would be creepy as hell.
I spent a few days in a town called Crew, Virginia, and it's just that dirt roads, no street
Mm.
lights, and it just gets super dark at night.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I can imagine just how creepy it is. But yes, so like I say, 5 out of 10 for 1 and 2, and 4 out of 10 for 3. There's nothing really much else we can talk about when it comes to these films because, like you say, the plot's very simple. It's very basic. People go on vacation, go on tour in Europe, and they end up getting killed and tortured by the elite hunting club, and then the same event happens in Vegas. We do have some more Into the Darkness coming in the month of June because we are going to be doing the Hatchet trilogy. No, the Hatchet franchise, because I believe there's a fourth one.
Hatchet 1, 2, 3, then the fourth one is called Victor Crawley.
Yes, so we're going to be doing the Hatchet film, which I've watched the first two, and I have to say I've enjoyed them more than I have Hostel. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, like I remember not really caring for the first one too much, but versus like a Hostel, yeah, I'll take the first Hatchet at least any day.
Yes. So I'm going to ask the people, the audience who watch this, if you have an idea of a franchise or a film that you would like me, Anthony, and the other, uh, you know, amazing guests that I have on the channel that like to review horror. If there's a certain film or a certain franchise or a certain group of movies you would like us to check out and review, let me know in the comments below, because we're always looking for interesting movies to do. There is a film that I'm thinking of reviewing that I think Anthony would like to review with me, which I'll talk to him about soon. But Anthony, is there anything coming to Anthony Jordan's Movies and Gaming?
Well, I meant to have it up by now, but there's been a lot of maintenance work done on my place. But I plan on having my Godzilla 1985 review up soon.
Nice. Cool. Well, as for the entertainment headquarters outside of horror, I do have a number of things coming up. I do on Saturday coming at 10 p.m. UK time. It'll be 2 p.m. Pacific time. I am going to be doing my first live Build the DeLorean. That's right, I'm going to be attempting to build a model kit of the DeLorean from Back to the Future. So hopefully you can tune in and check out if that's a success or a goddamn disaster. Who knows? But outside of that, yes, I have to be patient and not hurry the fucker off the wall. That's on the 16th, and then on the 18th, I hopefully will be doing my first of my new segment with Jake Hall called What You Been Watching, which is basically me and Jake Hall have watched a number of films this week, and we're just going to showcase what movie. It's a movie that we're owning with physical media collection, and it's basically we're going to be talking about the films and the shows that we've watched that week via with physical collection that we own. So that's my new series with Jake Hall called What You Been Watching. And then on the 23rd of May, it's the next retro classic movie show where me and DJ Anubis, my amazing co-host from the Metal Tavern Radio, are going to be talking about his pick in the only watchable Steven Seagal movie, Under Siege.
If I can, I'd like to be on that one.
You're more than welcome. Open invitation, Anthony. That's on the 23rd at 10 p.m. So that's what's coming up for the rest of the month, unless there's a few films I check out and put out a few reviews. But that's what's coming up for the rest of the month of May on the entertainment headquarters. Thanks, Anthony, once again for being a guest on Into the Darkness.
It was more fun to talk about these movies than it was to watch them.
Yes, we've had fun at least attempting to talk about these movies. That's all we can do, is do our best. But as always, keep enjoying your movies, keep enjoying all things entertainment, and always go into the darkness.